like to take a pause sometimes, like when we see the circle pop, just to see, do we have anything happening that is like completely out of the ordinary? And no, we don't. Normally I let the chat answer the questions, but I can just tell you real quickly that we don't. We do have an NIP jumping East Coast. Some have been arguing that, oh, that's so new. If you've been watching PEL or any of my other analysis videos, it's not. If they don't get a plane that allows for them to go to George Ball, they don't see a reason to find vehicles or fight for vehicles and go all the way up there when they can just stick around and loot the eastern side. So not a whole lot of new in that regard. Not a whole lot new at all. Circle though, pretty centered up, somewhat eastern. You'd expect to see teams traverse or maneuver over towards the eastern side of things. Of course, plenty of teams going to be trying to fit in the areas up and around the mansion and Alamo, the warehouse, all these things, the dips outside, the liquid compound, as I like to call it. All these areas will be contested early on. You might see some people set up shop and lumber mill just because they know they don't want to go out into this open field and potentially lose vehicles. So let's see how teams decide to rotate out early on here. I like the split from Crow Crowd, CC. They have two guys looting up by Severny, and then they have two players looting down here, which means that when you have these sort of circles, they have two players in with a position or the chance to get into good spots early on. That's a really nice split. These rewills just outjudged most of the time with the win. Yeah, exactly. They had some good games from the Puffcuts. No reason for them not to go there again. See the circle closing on in. I have added the kill feed up here on the screen so you guys can keep track of that as well. Wind strike, they'll be going over the north side. No surprises there. They always do this. Ends, they're sitting up here waiting. They've done that plenty of times before, just trying to see where that new circle will force them to go. And this time around it goes, okay, so center's down around mansion. That's a pretty interesting area to have games, because what we just talked about before is, if we can try to draw it up here, you have this big field, and it's, I guess you can say over to around something like that. This huge field, of course with the exception of the compounds that are in it, is a huge open wasteland, and it's a horrible spot to get caught out in the open. And it takes up quite a big part of at least the center area of the circle. Then this, for those of you guys who for whatever reason shouldn't know, this right here is a forest. You can't really see it because it looks like a big field on your screens, on the map at least, but that's a big forest, so you can cram people in there as well. But of course in this area of the map, teams would be opted to go for whatever compounds they can get themselves on the like around the center, or as far center as they can possibly go. Knights, they're taking up shops, 2-2 split in between Alamo and the mansion garage house. NIP takes up heaven. We have Face, they're doing a 2-2 split down here, cutting it off like that. Yeah, so not a whole lot of surprises here. Again, everybody wants to get themselves into some compounds, some sort of good positions they can play from. You have NIP out in the old Kinkwind dip, sitting there trying to hold their vehicles safe. Circle now goes up towards the heaven area. Again, forest in here, big area you can play around. Can easily house a lot of teams as well. That's even more so of a benefit, I guess you can say. G2, just two guys alive now. Chris and Udir trying to stay put in the south side. Again, forest here. You can see immediately 3 teams crashing, and they realize, you know what? Okay, our spots aren't gonna be in. You have Red Diamond sitting up here. You have Digital up in Yas, and they all realize, well, I mean, this is what we gotta do, right? There's not a whole lot more to it. Not a whole lot more to it than that. So they crash into the forest. Digital, they try to push down towards mansion, I believe. They end up getting killed because of it. So all these teams fighting off against one another, while NIP, they just chill in heaven. Everyone's trying to scare off, like fight off one another, but NIP's main thing right now, and that's the issue. That's the thing that you gotta always keep in mind, no matter where you are in the circle. You gotta figure what are the primary pressure points. The face split. This one? Is that what you want to talk about, Kobe? There's not a whole lot to it. You can cover each other, and you can, I mean, you can get a lot of info. So it's pretty decent spot to be in. They move up into the circle. Red Diamond push around them. I believe, right? Yeah, they push up and over, and then face crash into the mansion area. So not a whole lot to it really. It's a pretty standard split to set up to try and get some more info, considering where you are. No, but what I was gonna say before is that you gotta always, like, no matter where you are in the circle, if you're not planning on moving right now or like in the moment, you have to always sort of think, okay, so where, like, because you have an idea where the opponents are around you according to what sounds you've heard and what you've seen. And for example, if you're an IP here, what you could do is say, oh my god, there's so many teams in here, let's focus on them because we can get kills. But right now, what's the most important thing is that you have X amount of teams out on the west side, and now sure, they got the circle. Okay, so now that changes, right? Because now they got the circle, which means that all these teams will be coming your way. That's where you gotta, like, that's where you gotta put up your like, primary sort of defense line. Because if there's a guy like if there are two teams proning out here, it would make no sense for either of them to try and make their way over towards heaven, because they can. I mean, it's not exactly an optimal spot to be in, but it's gonna be really hard for them to try and push into heaven. Whereas sure, all these guys, they don't really have any other options. Sure, they could try and push around north. There's some dips up here that you can play around. But if you go south, there's nothing. I mean, down here, there's absolutely nothing to play around at all. You have the dip underneath heaven, but that's about it. That's pretty much all you can play for. So what you gotta do if you're an IP right now is you gotta figure out, okay, so we can expect, because you see there are 43 guys alive in the game, we can expect X amount of players to come from the east side towards us. How are we gonna prioritize this? Are we gonna say, you know what, let's just move together, whether it's down here, whether they go up in this direction, and say we'll just sit 4 guys together so we can cover each other? Because even though this isn't the same compound, it can actually be pretty tricky to defend one another if you keep the split for too long. So are you gonna go in and defend each other, or are you try just to play it safe and hold each your building and then let them come close? We'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. But that's like the decision making you have to do every time you go into a new area. Every time you see that new circle pop, where is the pressure gonna come from next? How is it gonna unfold coming in after this? Do I think it was a good split? You were to split yellows with the compound uphill. Well, I mean, both can work. And they were never up the hill earlier, so they didn't have the info from up there. They pushed in from the south. NIP gets a circle. They try to hold off ends. Now Vart runs down to help, but there's already too late, as you can see. Miracle and Vart, they're up here, but immediately, that's what forces the push, right? I mean, Trifly does the perfect thing. And that's one of those things where ends, they're just so damn good. I mean, they're every time they need those shots landed, they will land them more likely than not. Mikas and Rustanma, they're driving up on bike towards the glasshouse that NBS and Gaxi are in. And then as you can see here, what they're doing is they're making their way up towards the compound, but they're also baiting NBS to peek out the window or just peek down because the pressure is coming, right? The bike is coming in their direction. They hear the bike, they peek out, and Trifler lands like the most important knock on towards him, because that just means that it became a 2v1 fight instead of a 2v2. Vart comes in, he's going to be too late. That's going to be all of them down, and all of a sudden Miraku is by himself. All of this was set up by Trifly on the edge getting that one knock. Just got to keep that in mind. Trifly gets the knock, and that's what sets up that entire fight for them. That is pretty impressive. Because right now, there's still 7 teams remaining in the game. And that one knock just gave 2 of their players like the best position to be in. Ends comes out, gets the knocks, and they go down, but they get 2nd place in that game. Off of Trifly landing a perfect shot on towards NBS, they get a position that they can play from and 2nd place. I mean, Rust and Mamigas, they played this one extremely well. Jokers, I mean, there were 4 guys up coming in late, and they kind of threw it, but in the end, still really impressively played by Ents there. So that's game 1. That was game 1. We'll jump on over to game number 2. And again, if you guys have questions along the way, do feel free to ask. We'll just scroll this one out. And see. Plane, pretty straightforward. Everyone has accessibility to whatever they would want. Circle goes west coast. Okay, that's not new. We've seen that many times before. And again here as well. I mean, just reverse what you had before, right? Go up over, spread out around the field. You can either go forest side, you can go all the way down to the southern forest. If you're coming in from the top, you can go up and over, take a position up by Everest, scout further down. You can go all the way down the south, other side, scout down, take compounds, scout in. There are so many ways you can play this one. If you're Navi, you can wait till late and come up over the George Pole Bridge. If you're West Coast team, you can just hug at the line down here, scout, hilltop, scout, and then forest or up, as we said before. There are plenty of positions you can play from to make your way into this circle. But what is interesting, of course, is the quarry area and everything around it. How it's not exactly the easiest place to place. Same thing going with the swamp areas. Not exactly the easiest places to play around. There's so many open fields. I mean, everything up and around here is just like really big open fields that you never really want to be in. Oh, we'll just rewind that a little bit. So what we see is G2 go in, South Face come in with them, TSM, and Knights, they pretty much go a sort of a caravan, making their run on in towards the circle. Knights go further south because they see TSM pull up in the compound they would have wanted, potentially. Everyone else coming further in as the circle sent us up. Water gets excluded, that's always good to see. And then again, we have the quarry area alongside this hill or mountain. I don't know if we would call it a mountain really, but like a big hill down here. It's a good place to be, but it's so easy to get caught off guard if you're up there. I mean, you have to hold so many angles, and you need to be 4. I mean, you could maybe try and play it with 3, but there's just so many angles to hold that you always have, and it's such a wide area that if you sit in the middle, you can't get any info. So you need to be pretty much like on each edge in order to look like in all of the different directions. And with that, it's so easy for you to get. I mean, there's even with that split, there's still a chance that you might not see everyone and you'd get surprise attacked. NIP, they try to push far north. Navi's already up there, so they're going to be running into them. Push around the side comes in. NIP forced into chopsticks. Not exactly the kind of place you want to be in Circle 3, but that's just how it is. Or Circle 4 will make that. Circle, though, does go up towards them. Pretty good that they get the circle up there. We see down south, all of a sudden, this hillside becomes a... I mean, not exactly a hellhole, but it's really hard to push down, especially if you have teams standing in the compound. And that's what we always talk about. Every time we have these circles, we always draw up the lines as to, okay, so what are the entry points to the circle, right? What we have here is we have a field that goes, I want to say, let's just draw it up like this. If we draw it up like that, this entire part from here to all the way down here is a big field, right? You can go out there and have a vehicle for it, but as long as this area is still in, then you can't cover yourself from anything or anyone. So that's pretty much a no-go, unless if you have either one of 2 compounds. And you have the same thing up and around chopsticks. Of course, you can go inside chopsticks, but that's going to be hard to push into. And then you have the 2 compounds. If you're a smart player coming from south, you won't be running into either the compounds. That means that from here to, well, potentially all the way down here is a big no-go. Which then leaves you with pretty much only one option, because if you have this entire area from here all the way up here being a area of the circle where either you fight or you die, right? Like if you don't fight people, you'll just die to the blue, so you have to make your way in somehow. That pretty much means that for all these teams that are trying to come in, all they can do if they have vehicles is either try to push all the way around and get in from here, from where G2 are already sitting. That's why they're staying out on the sides here, because they are expecting kind of the flow to come around this way. Or just play it extremely slow, because we have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams down here. And we already have 2 teams in the compounds just sitting around and waiting for them pretty much to make their way on in. Windstrike, try to crawl on in. That's not gonna work. Oh, Beautiful Death has to go up and pick up his teammates. That's gonna be scary, because they have the compound here. Mert is in here. And if anyone... I mean, the fortunate thing is right now everyone is in the compound south, as you can see. Had anyone sat up here and realized that one of the vehicles left, then Mert would have been pulled up on immediately. So, look at this. That's the issue, right? Beautiful Death. And that's where you gotta figure whether it's worth it or not to go pick up your friends. Because Beautiful and Mert... they have the compound in here. That center, smack in the middle. And Iron 6mo, they're out here fighting Windstrike. So they know there's a team down there, and still, Beautiful Death drives out there to pick them up. And sure, okay, you made it one way, you made it out there, that's fine. But now everyone, I mean, you made it out there because people weren't expecting a vehicle or seeing a vehicle going from inside the circle to sprint outside it, right? And now all of a sudden, while you had that, then you got to drive back in, and that's when people are now ready for you, because Ents, they weren't looking that way at all. They were focusing up on towards Navi and what was going on down here, so that they kind of slipped through when they went this way. But now when they got to go back again, that's where all the focus is going to be. And then Windstrike, they're in a better position. Now Ents is waiting for them. They just get torn to pieces immediately. So pretty risky play. And you can say, do you rather want to have 2 guys alive in here, guaranteed, or do you want to try to get in 4 with a chance of you being a solo? It's one of those calls where the in-game leader has to make the I guess the final decision. But it's risky for sure. It's super risky, and unfortunately for Digital, didn't really work out the way that they wanted it to. Navi, they're pushing in from the top. Interesting. Interesting to me that they don't scout this first. Because you have the double red houses right here that no one has taken. And of course, I mean, Windstrike can't really peek anything because Ents, they're holding them down. Same thing with the compound here. Liquid, they can easily shoot up towards Ents if they want, or towards Windstrike if they want to. But the fact that Navi pushes all the way around the side and goes into chopsticks rather than take the compound is actually a little surprising to me. Ents, they're then allowed to take the compound. They run over each other. That's not what you want to have happen, especially with Windstrike pushing in from behind. They're now pushing up in the compound, full on committed. Liquid and TSM try to fight things off. Liquid pushes in. They realize there's no one there, so they get themselves a free compound. Or there is one, Murder's there, but he's not gonna start engaging all by himself. Wookie tries to push in by himself, not gonna work out. Windstrike and Ents both go down. This was a smart play. I remember this. This was a smart play by G2. So they have Chris and Kane with the US going out to the east side of the circle to sort of just hold down. They throw some smokes and they grant themselves some cover. And sorry. And then the 2 other players from G2 try to crash into the compound and sort of make their run on forward. They take out Murd. And then they figure, okay, so all we can do from here, because we can't drive over here, that's just going to mess up the position, because we cannot fit 4 guys behind 1 US, right? So they try to go for the shack in the middle, which doesn't end up working out the way that they wanted it to, unfortunately. But still they had 2 players up. And then the circle hard shifts west, which makes it, of course, really hard for G2. Liquid, they're kind of pinned behind the broken walls of their compound. Navi, they're sitting down in the gutter or in chopsticks, trying to look up and over. But now with the circle closing that center, everyone has to make their way in. And this was just a big smoke fiesta. I mean, there was pretty much smokes everywhere. And it was, yeah, in the end, I believe it's Liquid who takes the win there. Or was it? No, it's Navi wins it. Navi wins it. But yeah, really interesting match. Always interesting when you have these really open-ended areas of the map. You have to fight around and see what you can do with. But fun game nonetheless. That was game number 2. So we'll head on over to game number 3. Alright. We'll remove that. And yes, so western, somewhat southwestern plane. Circle goes north, meaning of course that if you're, whoa, what's going on here? If you're a Yas team, Stalwart team, can't make your way up there. Seems to me like Rustenbar will tell me otherwise though. Nope, they're just gonna make their way up towards Severny and say, you know what? Circle's already popped. There's no reason for us to drive all the way over here and all the way back again if we already have a spot in the circle where there's no one else. So they stick around. Up there, CC, they jump down south. They would normally be the team to go up towards Severny, but they went south this time around. And then everybody started making their way on up. Face, usual rotation over the eastern side. Red Diamonds take over the center. And this is, of course, I mean, it's not guaranteed that this circle is going to go north. But, I mean, if you cut the line with the river, then there's a, I mean, the what do you call it? The percentage of landmass on the northern side of the river compared to the southern is pretty big. So big chance that it'll go up there. And the thing is with the north side, of course, that if you want to get a compound, you got to get up there pretty damn early, because there aren't a whole lot of areas that you can really take without having to fight for them. Then this happens though, and you can see it immediately on all the vehicles. All the cars start driving back. It's still not guaranteed. I mean, there's still a we'll draw it in another color. Still pretty much a cut through with water, right? How much the circle really gives of land mass on each side. It's, I mean, it's probably not a 50-50, but something close to it. It takes a little dip down here, of course, but maybe 60-40, something like that in the sense of land mass. So you're not guaranteed which side it's gonna go to, but one thing is for sure, you wanna have as good a chance to get across quickly should you be on the wrong side. If you sit down on the south side and it flops over to this one in the next circle, you don't want to be sitting in this compound if you could be sitting down here. You don't want to be sitting up here if you could be sitting down here by the church. That's what I mean. The faster you can get over, the faster you can kind of utilize the chaos and everybody going, oh, it went to one side, and then get across in the meantime while people are trying to locate everyone, the more, like, the safer you will be. If you sit down here, the circle goes north, and then you start rotating, then everyone has already made their way to the other side, and they'll just be sitting on the other side going, let's sit here and then let's wait a second just to make sure that no one else is coming over the river. So they'll just be sitting up here with their guns pointed at the bridge on this side, like looking down the entire sort of shoreline to make sure no one else is crossing. And that's where you're really going to be in trouble, right? Because blue circle is going to be pushing on you and everything is chaos. So as we talked about many times before, that's why you normally see when you have these circles that go close to the river, teams will try to either have people on both sides. You could have two guys up here and two guys down here, or however you want to play it, or just be as close to the river as possible so that when that circle guarantees where it's going to go, you have a quick chance to get across. As you can see, Jokers sitting up in ruins. Digital, they're going down to the compound here, so they have an easy sort of access route to both sides. Navi, they're taking the garage compound. Jokers, Knights taking the other one. CC going into containers. And then G2's taking the long route around. But they're playing it really smart, because they have just, I mean, the later they can make this rotation, the better. They're hitting just on the edge with blue, right? By the time that they hit the circle here, by the time that they enter the new circle, then the one that's going to be following it is going to pop, which means that you can see right now they're getting in, they're stopping on the edge, and they have made this rotation just a few seconds ago, right? Had they done this 1 minute earlier and stayed on the edge, then they would have had no info anymore on what was behind them. So while they were playing it super smart, it's coming up here, then in the meantime, another team could have set up shop here, waiting for a potential pushback the other way in the blue, because it's only circle 3, right? So it's not going to do that much damage. But because they're doing it so late, then, I mean, what are the odds that if you just left here, that a team is going to be right there behind you? It's, I mean, you would most likely have heard the vehicles drive behind you should they have come there. So circle, now at this point, pretty much guaranteeing that it's going to go north. Can still play around the south side and be in for a G2. TSM, they're going to crash into Atlantis. M19 going to drive, or try to drive on over to the south side. That's actually a pretty interesting rotation. You can see here, M19, they're sitting in North George. They're sitting up on the western side. I'll just drag it over a bit so you can see it better. They're sitting up in North George when this circle pops. And instead of trying to maneuver their way over the top, because now they heard the vehicles from Red Diamonds, right, go over this way. So instead of trying to make their way either around them or further up north, or like just run through the city and in, they're actually up to go down south and fight their way over. But look at their land mass, because this circle, I mean, we're hitting circle 4 to 5. This circle is gonna, like, the time span between this circle showing and then actually starting to close in, it's not that big. So for you to try and find yourself confident in land mass that is here, and probably having to share it with other teams, as opposed to trying to slowly fight your way in on the top side, that is a pretty ballsy move, I would say, for them to cross over this way instead of just try to make their way up that way. You can see Ratio H, they're actually going the other way too. They're actually going up north to try and get in the position up there. But nope, M19, they go completely opposite of what anyone else probably would do in that situation, and go down south. A new circle, of course, pops, and it goes over to the north, to be expected. And we have just Vitality's compound in now. Every other compound pretty much excluded, other than, okay, we have NIP down here. They're just in as well. All of M19 dying in blue. That's what I'm saying. These circles, they start closing in pretty quickly. Not like the closing speed is quick, but the time between them is not that long. So if you're not ready to move immediately, then it's gonna cost you, especially if you don't have meds for it. Joker's TSM, they're fighting on the south side. Windstrike leaving the compound, trying to push up over and take some control. Great third-party opportunity for them. They saw knocks on both sides, so they have the numbers. And sure, they got 2 players knocked, but they would get them all back up on their feet again. Face, they're trying to push in. Ends, they're clearing the edges. Ends is not in a hurry to get in. I mean, they're just chilling and fighting off people out in the blue. It's costing them, though. As you can see, Squeaky, last player and only player that actually survives that. We've seen a lot of times when Ends take these fights, they get out pretty much on top without taking any casualties. But here, this time around, not quite working out the way they wanted it to. And then for those of you guys who don't know the terrain here, you have like a dirt road going through here. And then you have a sort of a downhill on this side. And this is just one big uphill to the plateau up around the compound that all these players are on. So that's why we see 2 teams, or a team and 1 player down here. And the other 5 teams are all just crammed up in the on the north side. Windstrike, they play it smart. They go to take center control. They know that this is going to be the final circle in just a moment, and they don't want to get caught down here. That's what I like. Really smart play from Windstrike there, actually. Don't want to get caught on the south side. Whenever all these guys are done fighting, then they'll be looking down here, right? Because that's pretty much the only spot they weren't looking at when they were fighting. So Windstrike realizes we cannot just stay down here. Even though it's safe and it's cozy and all that, when or if we ever have to leave, run this way, and if this fight up here is already done by that time, there's no way in hell we're going to win it. So they move up early. I like it. It's a smart play by them. And, well, I mean, that just means, of course, they have to fight off all the guys that are already up here. So fights occurring. Base getting fought off on both sides. Vitality in the middle. 4 guys up. They had the compound. So, sure, they were a little fortunate with the circles. But had the compound. Works their favor. Works their way. 1 down from each team. And Nuki goes down too. So Vitality wins it. Good job by them. I mean, again, sure, they had the compound. It always helps you out. But they get the win and 9 kills with it. So as you can see, it wasn't just because they're just chilling in the compound doing nothing. They were actually being pretty active and engaging in fights off of it. That was game 3. We'll jump over to game number 4 as we make our way over to Miramar. I'll just pause that real quick. Then I will throw up this. Game 4. There we go. And thank you, Fun MC. I'm glad you liked it. If you guys, I mean, again, if you guys have any questions throughout any of this, please do ask. Or any comments, or anything you want to discuss. Always down for a good PUBG discussion. That was game 3, though. Let's go into game 4 and see how this one unfolds. Base jump out early, and people have been wondering. People have been asking me, oh, why do they loot here? Don't they loot Monte Nuevo? Yes, they do. But as we can see here with the plane path, we'll just draw it up. Something like that. There was a bit of turbulence down here. It kind of swivered, but you know what I mean. For Phase to go over to Monte Nuevo, that's a pretty long distance to have to make it here. And obviously, you cannot parachute all the way over there. I mean, technically, you probably could, but it would take you an hour. So if they want to land anywhere and take vehicles, either they're gonna go for them down here. I'll just draw another color. Down here, up by Picado, you can take them there, and then like the vehicles along the road here. And Red Diamonds land here already. So they would have to fight Red Diamonds for their vehicles while trying to continue over to Monte Nuevo, which is, it's just not worth it. So for Phase, much smarter. They know that Monte is going to be free because it was the Eastern Circle. So if they want to, and say the circle goes up here, then they can just go along the road all the way up. There are so many vehicle spawns down here in the South Road anyway, so they have an easy chance to rotate around. They know there's going to be nobody here at all because, well, I mean, they were the first team to jump out of the plane, right? Like, they jump off immediately, so they know they got like the quicker start than anyone else. So they jump off. They can always go this way if they want to. They yeah, they can pretty much do whatever they want from down here. So pretty smart reaction jump from them, not wanting to contest anything. You can see Red Diamonds up here. Now they get the circle too. So that's just a win, double win, I guess you can say. Jump out of the plane early and get the circle. That's a good good way to kick things off. Now, thing with this circle is that you have the amazing city of Las Leones take up a pretty big chunk of it. Also, of course, also there's water. We'll just draw that up because we know that it's there. So this is a big no-go, of course, water. You don't want to play around in that. And also Las Leones is not really a city you want to be in early on. Sure, you can position yourself on the mountainsides around, but you do not want to sit inside the city. It's simply too risky early on. You don't get any info. You can easily get caught off guard if there's another team hiding in there. And it's too much of a risk to try and go into the city early game if you have a chance to play, well, pretty much from anywhere else. So water, big factor in this circle, and Las Leones as well, because it's going to block off some rotation opportunities coming in. You can see, like, if you try to come down to the city this way, you kind of have to swivel around if you want to go to the center. You cannot just drive through the city, right? So teams are opted to go either around the side, make their way down this way, or come in from the northeast, like along the coastline, and come down around here. As we see, Team Liquid, they go all the way around. Down south, Vitality, they go all the way around to the hillside there. Everyone coming out the east side. Nobody wants to go up and over. Knights, they're going to go up to the hilltop to see if they can scout their way further forward. Wait for that new circle to pop. And then we head over to even more south. Holy cow, this is a horrible circle. An interesting one. Because one of the things that I like about these circles, because there's not a whole lot to like, but one of the things that I like about them is that it's so different from what we normally see. And that forces the players to, I mean, you when you see a circle like this, the players, they will look over at the in-game leader and be like, so do you have a plan for these type of circles? And he'll be looking through his playbook like, and he cannot come up with anything. So it's like, that's where you really get the players to, or the in-game leaders, but like specifically, or just I mean, the entire team pretty much, to really just play on the, what do you say, like more reacting based, so more what we're seeing, what we're doing, not so much pre-planning and we know that they like to rotate here and they like to do this and they want to do that. It's more of a, this is what we're seeing right now, this is what we're playing around. Sure, we can keep track of the kill feed, we can try and sort of get an idea of where everyone else is, but these sort of games are the ones that you rarely ever get a playbook for, or you can rarely prep yourself for. It's just one of those, we got to just play off of reaction, and that's sometimes where you see some of the teams pull off some really cool things. G2, they're driving all the way around the south side, makes sense. TSM, they're coming in on that side too. You can see already with, this is probably around 60, a little more than 50% at least of the circle being water. So not a whole lot of space for all these teams. That's why we see them all crammed on top of each other. We got the cave up here. Never seen an ending in there, but that could be fun. And yeah, let's see. Let's see, where did the circle go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Even further down south, more water. This is actually pretty horrible. But same thing again. I mean, same thing happened in, there's a ton of teams here. I'm surprised to see that people still using vehicles. But there are a ton of teams here. Everyone's trying to get in. The issue with these sort of circles is that when you get a hard shift south, which this technically isn't because there's still space down here, but because there's no land, it is a hard shift. Normally what you want to do is you want to get in from the south side, right? You want to go down and you want to get in from the other side, but because there's water here, not really an option. So teams will just be forced to layer cake, like just climb on down, traffic jam their way into the circle, and that's where, I mean, the better, honestly, these are the type of circles where the better fraggers win. Normally you can say, but it's always the better fragger that wins because you have to shoot people. Sure, but a good fragger could be taking a fight early and lose a teammate, and that's going to set them at a big disadvantage. So this is just where instinct and proper scouting, proper shooting, literally, is going to get you those wins. There are a few compounds in and around the area here. But other than that, for those that are out in the open, it's just team coordination, communication in hectic moments, like having clear communication and stuff like that. That's what gives you the wins in these type of circles. Everyone fighting on the edges, teams in the middle just chilling for now, at least. Navi cleared their compound, faces all by themselves too. G2 is taking the south control by the water as well. And then we get the circle that shifts back on up. Makes things a little more tricky. As we see here, they're coming around the northern side. Instead trying to get in. Sneaky peekily make their way inside the circle. And then we see this circle go west. Big fat road there. It's a tricky one. Them splitting here? No, it's not risky. It's not risky. I mean, they have full control of the road. And one of the things they can do from here is that Udyr and Kane, they can't really see this way because of the way that the hill is. So what Braxco and Chris can do is they can make sure that nobody's wrapping around and trying to push into the... Because if they were all sitting up here, a team could have wrapped around and put themselves down here and then pushed up into the compound. And they technically wouldn't know unless if they heard their steps. Because FaZe ain't going to be looking that way. And they're more focused on what's happening over here and up the road. So that could be a threat. And also Braxco and Chris, they can see if anyone's trying to wrap down here to maybe do the same thing on FaZe, and they can kill them off. And FaZe, as I said, they won't be focusing them. So they have an easy access across, and as long as they can keep the south sides clear, then they know they're coming into the next circle, because we're getting so late in the game that it's impossible pretty much to stay alive in the blue. That if they get up here, and they're alive when they are there. You see Braxco crosses over while Chris is covering. And Chris looks around. Oh, okay. No one here. Stays until the blue is pretty much almost there. FaZe takes one shot, but boom, he's up there now as well. Sure, they still have to cross over this way, should the circle go over there. But now they're 4 guys together, and they know for a fact that this entire side is clear. So they don't have to worry about anyone pushing them from behind. So smart split from G2. They got a lot of info off of it, and now they can... play pretty much only looking in a 180 direction instead of constantly. Like for FaZe, they have to constantly look in all directions, right? Because they never know. They never know what's up. But G2 now, they only have to worry about like this angle, whatever that is, 100 and I don't know, 60 degrees maybe, 150 degrees. So it just makes it easier if you can commit more people to look at the same. Then there's a bigger chance to see things. As opposed to if you constantly have to spin around like a sort of camera just trying to observe everything. Sometimes you can miss things. G2, they cross over. They know that FaZe is in the compound. They try to push up and take the fight towards them. And then they decide to disengage because multiple teams are starting to get in on the action. They run over towards Liquid. They want to fight them off, it seems like. So they get the circle hard shifted down south. So that's going to pay off. They can just stick around now, wait for the teams to push down towards them. Samty gets knocked out in the blue. James goes down as well. Just 4 teams remaining. 2 solos. They both get annihilated. And Navi almost... Ooh. Nope, not going to happen. But almost takes 2 wins in a row. Good game. They had a good win previously on the ranked game, and now they almost got themselves one more on Mirma. So a good game for Navi there to sort of finish off that one. How many kills did they get? Let's see. Navi. Whoops. Solo out that one. Navi 8 kills. So they were pretty much fighting the entire game as well. And you can see G2 only 2 kills. They did get points. I mean, the only 2 kills they got that game were the final 2 kills on the Navi players. But the win, of course, gave them 10 points. So that's good. But interesting because G2 is normally a really fighting team. But here they were just sort of playing passive and trying to stay put. And some might argue that's the reason they didn't make it. Because they went too far away from the way that they normally play. Like G2, they got up, they got ahead, and then they... Oh, we gotta refresh this one. G2 got up and ahead, and then they kind of turtled. They just stopped, and they said, you know what, we're ahead now, we'll just play it safe, and then they... it's 1 point per kill, 1 point per kill, and 10 points for win, exactly. Yeah, G2, they had a really good start off, they got into a good position, and then they went away from what they did that gave them success, and then other teams kind of just caught up on them. Really unfortunate if you're G2 that they didn't make it by 1 point, but sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. That's just how it is. Circle here, anything interesting to look out for? Joker's up there, CC up there, M19, not in Los Leones, obviously, with a plane that is this far north, so they'll go up north as well. Digital, they're going down south to Valle, and yeah, not a whole lot of surprises. Not a whole lot of surprises in the final game. here of day 3. Everyone's rotating on in. Again, this of course being, I feel like this is the line that I've drawn the most throughout all these analysis streams. But yeah, this mountainside is kind of annoying to rotate over. So people will obviously go around that. And then of course Los Leones, you don't want to drive through that. Teams should be going around the southern side of that. Nobody drives through El Pozo. You'll be go over the top. And then yeah, that's pretty much the entry point you have to this kind of circle. Again, Chumacera, not really the place you want to be either, but there are some hillsides around it that you can position yourself in and play from. Fights start occurring. Navi and Ents both come in from the south as we expected, and then the circle goes a little further west, somewhat center. I mean, it centers on where the majority of the teams are already, so for the most part, people don't have to move. But of course, for the teams that aren't in, they're going to be trying to sort of crash their way further forward. And it's always interesting because you have these, I mean, this area, as soon as we go south of, I want to say here, like if we draw a line here, everything is south because this is pretty flat. I mean, the area up around Montenevo is not flat like Miramar flat or Rankle flat, but it's a little more flat than what we see, because as soon as we come south, we see all the dark spots down here. It just became, I mean, this mountain ridge here, and the mountainside down here, the curvature of them, the terrain, like the level difference, it's just so big that if you can get up there and sit and look forward, you can see pretty much the entire circle from up there. And also if you're a team coming in from the south, it's really hard. You cannot just rotate quickly like this over or around and over, because the terrain is like that. And if you don't want to drive on the roads, which nobody wants to do, then you're forced to run up hillsides, and you don't really want to do those in vehicles, because you're sure, maybe if you're old, like if you got only bikes, but if you're forced to drop your vehicles and run, it's just going to take that much longer to do these rotations. So teams kind of still stuck up on the north side. Both Ents and Navi try to figure out how they're going to make those rotations in. Ents side, they just say, you know what, we'll just play it safe, we'll sit down on the bottom. And the good thing about being down here too is that now they're, because we talked about, we have a mountain line here and we have a mountain line going here. And if you're in the bottom, because if you're anywhere up here and you have to go over to the other side, then it doesn't really matter where you are, you'll have to cross it. But Ents actually play it smart. They say we'll stay in the bottom, and then wherever the side goes, because right now they're below all the mountains, right? They have access here. We'll just draw it in red so it's easier to see. They have access here, they have access here, and they have access here. So they say, you know, we'll stay in the bottom, and then we'll wait and see the new circle. You can see Squeaky, Trifly, they're just stopping. Mikas and Rostam are taking positions in case they have, like in case they need them. Boom, new circle pops, and now they go. Now they can say, good, so we don't want to be out here, because that's a, then we have to cross over. We don't want to be out here, because, well, then we have to cross over. So we'll just go, not drive up the middle, obviously, but pick and choose what side we want to play on. And they decide to go over on the hillside here. It makes perfect sense to play it the way that they, the way that they do. Stay in the bottom, so you don't have to go over the hillsides sort of horizontally, but you can just play the vertical game instead. Pretty wise decisions. And that's why, I mean, that's why you see them on top all the time. They make so many smart goals. It's not just the fact that they're fragging like crazy and they are all really good shooters. It's their decision making and how and when, like their timings on their rotations are, I want to say, unique in the sense that very few teams are able to pull them off as well as they are. They're probably, I mean, one thing is that Ents is a team that is getting a ton of kills, but they're probably also the team that rotates the most, like that spends the most time in vehicles driving around. So it's not that they get like circle upon circle thrown on top of their heads. They rotate all the time, and yeah, they do it well. So big kudos to Ents, because they do extremely well. Navi, they're trying to push on up. TSM trying to push on over. Now we got the mountain side here. Goes up this way, goes up this way as well. That's kind of a nice arrow I drew there. Goes up that way as well. You can see all these teams try to fight on through it. It's just really rough to play. I mean, one thing is that it's hard for us to analyze off of it because we don't really get to see the full-on terrain, but it is it's pretty tricky to play around this area. All the teams forced to fight in clusters. There's a compound down here, and then this whole thing is just a big open field, which is why you see majority of teams sitting up on the side up here. Because this is just a big hole. Yeah, that you will most likely die if you run into. And as you can see, Wind Strike, they're getting circle upon circle upon circle. Nothing new under the sun. They have been very good at snatching circles in late games. Next circle pops. Or final circle, I guess, pops. And they now forced at center. And that's Ratio Edge. They get to stick around. They get to hold them off. And they, I believe, get the win as well. Yes, they do. Ratio Edge, they played it smart here. They had Fast Rail and Copper Magic over on one side. So they hold off Jokers with help from Snark and Wanted. And then when they realized, good, the remaining players are now inside the compound, let's spread out and just pin them in. And that's the issue with compounds late game. They're really good for cover. They're amazing to be positioned in because you get, well, cover. But as soon as you have to leave them, that cover that you were hiding behind is gonna be the opponent's. Like instead of you having 10 meters to run through, where the opponent has to look at those 10 meters to find you, there is a door, a window, and all he has to do is just look at either three of them, and I mean whichever one you pop out of, boop, that's where he's gonna start shooting, right? So always hard to leave these compounds as well, especially if you allow for a team like a Ratio Edge to position yourself like properly. Because as you can see, as soon as these two players go down, that's when they start pushing out. Boom, squeak it down immediately. Snark pushes up, and yeah, they position themselves well off of it. So good game by Ratio Edge. They've been making a good they were, I guess you can say, making a good comeback over the final couple of days there. That was a game. We actually forgot to change that here. We'll do it now, even though it's a little late. That was game number 5. But yeah, that was day 3. So for those of you guys of YouTube that were watching along, if you like this sort of content, do hit all those like thingies. And yeah, that was day number 3. So thanks for watching.